Let's talk college football here on Any Given Thursday. Harrison Graham and Chase Sr. with you. And James Franklin, a lot of drama over the past month or so. Penn State has lost 3 games in a row, Chase. You grew up on the East Coast in the Philadelphia area. You covered Penn State football a little bit. Feels like there's a decent chance he's on the way out the door, which is why we might take a look at some candidates here to replace him.
Yeah, I think you and I are in agreement that James Franklin hasn't handled these college football coaching rumors all that well.
No.
And I followed this program my entire lifetime. I covered Penn State when I was working with WNEP in northeastern Pennsylvania. Right now, Penn State is in a position that it hasn't been in quite some time. They've lost 3 straight games. They weren't even included in the college football playoff rankings. He recently changed agents to Jimmy Sexton, who represents the likes of Lane Kiffin, Nick Saban, Kirby Smart, Steve Sarkisian, and some of the top college coaches across the college football landscape. And there have been a lot of rumors churning about James Franklin's interest in USC and USC's interest in James Franklin, but then you have other programs who are starting to enter the equation like the LSUs of the world. And when I read the tea leaves here and when I kind of dissect everything that James Franklin has said and how he's handled this situation, I kind of lean toward James Franklin coaching elsewhere next year. He deserves credit for carrying the momentum that Bill O'Brien had started. He has the top recruiting class in 2022. He has continued to make Penn State nationally relevant as a top 10 program, but hasn't broken through with the staple victory. And I think that while he might leave, Penn State fans honestly might be happy and content with that because they think that they can possibly get another better coach, and we'll take a look at some of those better options potentially coming up here in just a few moments.
Yeah, so we'll ask you, and by the way, they might lose 2 or 3 more games. At Maryland, they still have Michigan State.
Maryland's going to be a tough game.
They still have Michigan State and Michigan as well. This could be 7-5 or 6-6.
Disaster.
Will this be Franklin's last year at Penn State? Type Y for yes, type in for no. Get your votes down in the comments, and after this YouTube ad break, we'll take a look at the top 10 candidates to replace him. All right, at number 10, and the back end of this list, I don't love, Chase. I love the top 5, so we'll spend more time on those. Dave Clawson, Wake Forest. He's been getting some buzz because he's got Wake having a great year this year. Depending on when you're watching this, they're either undefeated or have just 1 loss. Play at North Carolina on Saturday. Look, you got to give him credit for what he's done this year. The reason I'm not high or super high on Dave Clawson, though, is Wake Forest a hard job to win at? Absolutely. I think he deserves a lot of credit there. But he's basically been 500 there before this year. So, I mean, like Penn State, is that what you're looking for? This feels like it would be a knee-jerk hire. That's why I've got him down at number 10.
I would hate it if I'm Penn State. I want no parts of Dave Clawson. I understand that he's done a great job this year with Wake Forest. I also don't like the next candidate either. That's Pitt coach Pat Narduzzi, who, like Dave Clawson, hasn't had really a massive amount of success. It's really one great year to lean on. Now, Pitt fans are probably saying, we beat Clemson when they were nationally relevant a couple years ago, but outside of that, they haven't really done much. Has Kenny Pickett balled out this year? No question, but no on Pat Narduzzi, no on Dave Clawson.
Yeah, Penn State is not a job that, we upset a powerhouse every once in a while. No, they're a blue blood. Like, sure, they're not Ohio State, but they're like a tier 2 blue blood in college football. You don't hire a coach that is known for occasionally pulling off an upset, and that's kind of what Narduzzi's been at Pitt. I mean, he was on the hot seat like 2 years ago, so it's not like he's just lit it up for the Pitt Panthers over the last 4 or 5 years. I want to ask you guys this. If, assuming Franklin goes, which, a lot of time to play out here, should Penn State hire an offensive or defensive coach? Type O for offense, type D for defense. It's obviously fascinating. I think where the sport is heading. In most cases, I would vote offense, but obviously it depends on what kind of candidate you should want. Let's look at Marcus Freeman here, the defensive coordinator at Notre Dame, very young, early 30s. He was the DC under Luke Fickell last year for Cincinnati. One of the real up-and-coming defensive-minded coaches, Chase. I thought James Yoder brought up a good point. I've only got him at number 8. If Fickell leaves Cincinnati, that might be the natural replacement there. Penn State might be a little bit of a jump at this point, but this guy's coming.
Yeah, Notre Dame's defense has really been up and down, but this guy is widely respected in many, many circles as being a prime head coach candidate. Now, is he ready to take the reins of a program like Penn State where there is a lot of pressure and they have a nationally renowned brand? I'm not sure. Yeah. I do think, though, that Cincinnati would be the better role for him because I'm not sure that Marcus Freeman is ready to the likes of Penn State.
Mark Stoops at number 7. Look, I know they lost the second game, but, dude, it's Kentucky.
Yeah.
To have this team in the top 20, I believe for the second time in 3 years.
Yeah.
Like, it's Kentucky, guys. Like, what he's done there is incredible. Now, and there's a group of coaches like this, like, are they better off maximizing middle-tier programs than actually, like, getting the best out of blue blood programs? Because I think there are a group of coaches, and I'd put Mike Leach into this category. You put Mike Leach at Alabama, it's probably a disaster. But can he maximize Washington State, Texas Tech? Yeah, he's proven to do that. He's doing a good job at Mississippi State now. He's got them in the top 25. I kind of think Mark Stoops is in that category of coaches, but I do think he's a guy that deserves to get interviewed by some of these top jobs. I think number 7 kind of makes sense for what he's done as of late.
Now, James Franklin bolts. BetUS will have you covered with who will replace him. And right now, you can bet on any college football game, any NFL game, a bunch of great prop bets with our sportsbook partner, BetUS. 125% deposit bonus if you use that link at the bottom of your screen. It's chatsports.com/bet, as well as the promo code CHAT125. What that means is you put $100 into your account, you get an additional $125 back. Sports gambling has become legal in many states across America, but no matter where you live, this deal will apply. Chatsports.com/bet. Enter the promo code CHAT125. Custom link for all of you.
One more guy until we get into the top 5. And look, you have to mention Bill O'Brien because he took on the challenge of being the guy after the Paterno debacle.
Yep.
And look, we're not going to sit here and say Bill O'Brien was winning 11 games a year or anything like that, but he stabilized an unstable situation. And look, everyone can laugh about how bad the Texans thing went. Look, they should have just not made him in charge of player personnel. They were winning games with Bill O'Brien. They were going to the playoffs almost every single year. It's just you basically made him the GM, and that was a bad decision. He should not have been the GM.
Yeah.
As a coach, good offensive mind. I think Bama's offense was better under Sark, but he's still done a good job with Bryce Young this year. I don't love Bill O'Brien. I've got him at number 6. I think there's better guys out there, but I respect him for taking that challenge head on about, 8-9 years ago now?
Yep.
And I still think he's a guy that will get another opportunity of being a head coach in college football.
Penn State football was on the death mat.
Yep.
Everybody wanted that program to be canceled. And I didn't agree with the NCAA at the time taking away Joe Paterno's wins, but it was an ugly, ugly situation. And for Bill O'Brien to build the program back up, allow them to survive, and bring about a lot of success is a hell of a job. I mean, I put it up there with what Matt Rhule was able to do at Temple University and Baylor. You know, I used to do a podcast with former Penn State quarterback Matt McGloin, and he talked very highly of Bill O'Brien. And yes, look, while the Houston Texans' tenure kind of fizzled a little bit, it fizzled because he had way too much player control over the roster.
Yes.
In terms of winning games, they were making it to the playoffs almost every year, and I'm not sure that ownership with the McNairs was all that great with the Houston Texans.
One question I'll ask you here.
Yeah.
Bill O'Brien or James Franklin?
Bill O'Brien, probably.
Wow, okay.
His game management, I think, would be much better. James Franklin's a great recruiter, but as a game day coach, I think you go with Bill O'Brien.
And that's the answer you have to ask if you're Penn State is anyone we hire has to be better than Franklin. That's got to be the goal if you're Penn State.
But it's going to be hard to be better than Franklin with recruiting.
Yes,
that's the only thing.
That's the other challenge.
Yeah.
Subscribe to the channel because we have more college football videos, NFL and NBA coverage as well. The college football playoff rankings come out every Tuesday from here on out. And if you want to watch me bitch at the playoff committee, join us every Tuesday because they suck and I should be in charge. YouTube.com/ChatSportsTV. This is the place for more college football, NFL, and NBA videos. Let's get into the top 5. And you and I may have debated this. I can't remember where you were at. I like the idea of Moorhead a little better than O'Brien. He's been at Penn State more recently. I get Mississippi State did not work out, but they didn't really embrace him from the beginning there.
No.
I think there was a culture misfit overall. Leach just fits that community better. He's done well at Oregon. He's been a good recruiter at Penn State and now with the Ducks, and he calls a really good game. I think Joe Moorhead's a guy that would be in my top 5 for Penn State.
Yeah, and again, a lot of this comes down to recruiting, and a lot of people will say, too, Moorhead's tenure with Mississippi State was a disaster. But I don't really think he was given a chance from the get-go.
2 years is like no time.
2 years is no time, especially in a really competitive conference like the SEC, especially with where Mississippi State was. Look, when Joe Moorhead was the offensive coordinator with Penn State, Trace McSorley, Saquon Barkley, Deshaun Hamilton, they won the Big Ten championship game and arguably should have gotten into the college football playoff. They lost a couple straight games. They beat Ohio State that year, and a big reason for their success, it was Joe Moorhead, and I love the way he calls and manages games with Oregon right now. What he did was a play-calling clinic against Ohio State, and the familiarity with Happy Valley and the Penn State program would have Nittany Nation very excited.
Anthony Brown was a backup quarterback at Boston College, and he has maximized him at Oregon. I don't think,
and that's the sign of a good coach.
If you can maximize quarterbacks, I'd argue he did it with Trace McSorley as well. That is very valuable at the end of the day. Pick one. Both guys have been at Penn State. Type B.O.B., Bob, for Bill O'Brien, or type J.M. for Jim Moorhead, or Joe Moorhead. I said Jim because Marsh initially made the graphic as Jim Moorhead, and I was like, who the hell is Jim Moorhead? It's Joe Moorhead. Type J.M., type B.O.B.
Lies.
Get your votes in. Top 4, a guy that I love, and I think he's coming quickly, Jeff Hafley at Boston College. I think long-term he wants the Ohio State job. We'll see if that ever comes to fruition. Well, you want a better chance of getting to Ohio State one day? Maybe you get the Penn State job and thrive there.
Yeah, Jeff Hafley's done a terrific job with Boston College. I mean, they were so irrelevant for a long time. The fraud Steve Adazio really sunk that program. I covered Steve Adazio at Temple, and he was a stiff at Temple. And then I don't know how he got that Boston College job. Now he's at Colorado State, and his game management continues to be horrendous. Jeff Hafley has done a great job with BC. I'd really like him.
If BC didn't lose their quarterback this year, Jurkovich or whatever his name is, they might win the ACC.
Yeah, and they've still been really good this year.
Yeah, there's no doubt. At number 3, Matt Campbell. Look, Iowa State hasn't been quite as good this year, but this guy you hear him talk and you're like, that's a leader. I mean, honestly, similar to Franklin, when he enters a room, you're just like, this guy understands how to guide young men and turn boys into men. That is what Matt Campbell has done at Iowa State. He's done a good job of maximizing mid-tier talent. You get him in a program that can get 4- and 5-star recruits. I think he's got very big potential. I think he's a candidate that would be very, very good for Penn State.
One of the downsides with James Franklin, while he's a great recruiter and has done a great job as the face of the program and a good communicator and representer of Penn State as a whole, he's been awful in big games. You know who's really good in big games and steps up and has his team playing very, very well down the stretch of the regular season? It's Matt Campbell.
Yeah, no doubt. Top 2, and how about Matt Rhule, who Joel Klatt said recently he's heard chatter that Matt Rhule may not be sold on the NFL. I don't know if he would bolt Carolina after 2 years, but if Penn State's like, we'll give you $8 million a year, and if he does like college more than the NFL, you're telling me he's not considering that?
Yeah.
I think you got to call Matt Rhule if you're Penn State, and I think he'd be an instant upgrade from James Franklin.
I went from covering Steve Adazio at Temple to Matt Rhule, and the difference in the gap couldn't have been larger.
Yeah.
I can't speak highly enough of Matt Rhule for what he is as a culture builder, as a guy who develops relationships. His coordinators are always really, really good. He's been an excellent recruiter.
His teams are always very well
and there
coached.
have been some rumblings, like you said, about him going back to the college ranks. He went to Penn State, has some ties there, loves that program, came up under Joe Paterno. If there's one college job that Matt Rhule, I think, would be interested in, it could be Penn State. And if there's one guy who could be there for a long time and be beloved, I'd love to see the face of that program be Matt Rhule. He's excellent in all phases, relationship guy, culture guy, coach and developer and recruiter of talent. I mean, he just knocks it out of the park.
What do you guys think is the better job between Penn State and LSU? I think it's LSU.
It's LSU.
I think I actually
LSU.
I meant for this question to be Penn State or USC. I must have mistyped on the.
I'd go Penn State over UCLA.
Type PSU
it's LSU
for Penn
over
State,
Penn State,
LSU or for LSU, obviously. I think LSU's the better job, but I do agree. I think I would go to Penn State over USC.
The Pac-12 is a joke,
dude. You watch those games.
It's
there's
a
no
joke,
one in the
man.
stands. I mean, it's
you got 110,000 deep every single game.
Yeah.
You got 50,000 frauds at UCLA.
Let's get to number 1. 1 and 2 could be interchangeable here. I think 1's more realistic because I still think it would take a lot for Rhule to bail after 2 years in the NFL. Luke Fickell, listen, I mean, what can you say, right? I mean, the guy has Cincinnati humming right now. And by the way, the disrespect from the college football committee is a joke.
Yeah.
They go on the road and handle Notre Dame by multiple scores, who the committee has in the top 10, and they won't put them higher than 6. That's disrespectful. Luke Fickell. And honestly, though, on the flip side of that, if you're Fickell, Chase, Cincinnati's going to the Big 12. Do you want to wait 3 or 4 years?
No.
3 or 4 years to maybe get into the college football playoff?
Cincinnati ain't paying you what Penn State is paying you.
Well, but my thinking was, if you're Fickell, maybe he'd be more patient, knowing that, okay, this could be the year he makes the playoff. I don't see how Cincinnati makes it in this current system, and that was proven on Tuesday night. Dude, if Penn State comes calling, you got to go, man.
And if I'm Penn State, I'd offer him $7 to $8 million a year,
Yeah.
which is more right now than James Franklin is making. And Luke Fickell might be a candidate for an LSU or a UCLA.
Yeah.
I just think he fits
USC.
the mold of a Big Ten coach.
Yeah.
I just think he's
wants
perfect in the Big Ten. Look,
He
he's
wants
already
the
in
Ohio
Cincinnati,
State.
Ohio. Go eastward to State College in Happy Valley. And we're not talking about Luke Fickell just being a good coach over the last couple of years.
No.
He takes over Cincinnati in 2017. They go 4-8. From there, 11-2, 11-3, 9-1 last year. They lost in the Peach Bowl against Georgia, who is now number 1 in the country. I think by far and away the top team in the country. And now 8-0. So the last 2 years, Cincinnati is 17-1. And I think, honestly, if they were to get in the college football playoff, they could compete with some of the teams that are going to be in there.
I'll ask you this. Who would win on a neutral field, Cincinnati or Oklahoma?
I think Cincinnati would
Cincinnati
win.
would win.
I think
Yeah.
Cincinnati
I
wins.
do, yeah.
I think Cincinnati could compete with Ohio State right now, too.
So do I. Who will be
Just
Penn
saying.
State's coach in 2022? Those are our top 10 candidates. Let us know who you guys think will be leading the Nittany Lions. And yes, it could still be James Franklin, although I don't think it will be.